Welcome back to Roots and Relevance. We are on episode 9 on our series of Esther, and we're hitting chapter 8 today. And we ended last time talking about a lot of threads. We talked about the providence of God in this and what God is doing behind the scenes. We talked about poetic justice and reversals, and I feel like chapter 8 is going to be more of that, more of the reversals happening, more on the other side of that, and we'll see
the upswing of the chiasm.
Exactly. So there's a lot to get into. So we are going to get straight into it. And let's start off with the first 2 verses. And Jonathan, if you don't mind kicking this off with those 2.
All right. That same day, King of Persia awarded Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Mordecai entered the king's presence because Esther had revealed her relationship to Mordecai. The king removed his signet ring he had recovered from Haman and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther put him in charge of Haman's estate.
All right. Anything, that's a quick 2 verses, but there's a lot.
There's a lot there.
In there. Yep.
So what's entailed with the estate, right? I mean, what does it mean that the king gave, a New American Standard says, gave the house of Haman to Esther? What is entailed in giving an estate or the house? Is it just the house, the building? What is that?
I mean, one of the things I read, if I remember correctly, that part of the Persian law was that when there was justifiable legal means to kill an official, that by law, immediately the king sort of inherits whatever he has. And so this isn't just out of nowhere. Haman is now received this and is now giving it to Mordecai, or giving it
gives it to
Esther, and Esther gives it to Mordecai.
Well, unless you're reading the Greek version, because the Greek version says that King of Persia gives it directly to Mordecai, which is not exactly what the Masoretic text as we have it today says.
Esther 2.0 says that?
Yeah, it says it gives it to Mordecai directly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, it must have been
I guess the translators have been around a long time.
Stop.
The guy
Stop
got
it. Stop it. But, I mean, here we just totally see this chiastic structure being played out, that we see not only is Haman dead, but now his house is Mordecai's, his estate.
Well, technically it's Esther's, but we'll go with it.
Esther's. Yes, it's Esther's, and then gives it to Mordecai.
Well, his job is also now Mordecai's, because the king took the signet ring that he had previously given to Haman for his awful edict, and he said, "Here, Mordecai, it's your turn now." And so, everything that was Haman's, that he held precious to him, that he took pride in, is now in his arch nemesis's hands.
Right, because remember that big speech that he gives before, after Mordecai doesn't bow down to Haman when he's been invited to the party. He talks about his money, all his family,
position.
Just bragging. Yep.
My position in the kingdom. All those things have been taken away from Haman, including his life, and now giving it to Mordecai.
Yep, including the auto pin, a.k.a. signet ring. I mean, I joke about that, but think about, that's literally what it was.
Yeah.
And not just an auto pin, because an auto pin, theoretically, in our world, works like the president says, here's the executive order, and it's signed by that. But here we actually
sign it. You should not sign an executive order with auto pen. You should sign a letter to George, 3-year-old kid that's written to the president saying, "I want to be president one day." And that's what you sign with an auto pen.
Exactly.
But anyway,
But this king actually, when he gives up his auto pen, he's very hands off, right? In both instances, and that's part of
Write what you want, guys. I don't care.
I don't care.
But you're going to see again, to go back to the Joseph story, which we've been doing. I mean, you're going to see the same thing that happens to Joseph here.
Mm-hmm.
So when Joseph interprets the dream and about all the drought that's coming, Pharaoh gives him new clothes. We're going to see that in 15 of this chapter. You see him getting the signet ring. You see him getting the second chariot. So you see this kind of royalty and this power being given to Mordecai, just like Pharaoh gave to Joseph, because of all his because of his acts. I don't know if they're righteous in this one, but
his saving acts.
At least his acts of some form. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was beneficial to the kingdom. So
totally. All right, let's keep going.
Then Esther spoke again to the king, fell at his feet, wept, and implored him to avert the evil scheme of Haman the Agagite and his plot which he had devised against the Jews. The king extended the golden scepter to Esther, so Esther arose and stood before the king. Then she said, If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor before him, and the matter seems proper to the king, and I am pleasing in his sight, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the calamity which will befall my people? And how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?
Okay. I mean, if only there was a hyperlink in that little passage.
We laugh because we think we're so smart because we got good commentators we're reading, but
Exactly. Where would we be without them, right? I mean, again, I think we mentioned this last week, but the Hebrew Scriptures is written in a way that assumes the reader knows like the stories that come before it. And this one in particular, whereas last week, Jonathan, it was a word, right? That we were looking at minus the jots and tittles.
Yep. Yeah, it was the word
and,
sold.
That was the hyperlink. And this time it is an entire, like really an entire phrase, right?
Two. Yeah, two phrases.
Two
think
phrases.
So, maybe. Yeah.
Directly lifted from the story of Joseph again. So I guess the question becomes, why here is there a hyperlink to that particular moment in that story?
Well, for those of us that don't know the phrases you're referring to, can you point those out for me?
Totally. It is the phrase.
It's verse 6. It's verse 6.
Verse 6, yeah.
For how could I bear to see the disaster or the evil that would come to my people? How could I bear to see the destruction of my relatives? Now, that's what Esther is saying to the king of Persia with regards to the decree that Haman wrote, that the signet ring enacted. And we see the same language that Judah is saying to Joseph, who doesn't know is his brother at that point, with regards to the slavery of Benjamin to Pharaoh because of his supposed theft of the silver cup of divination. That was,
and it's almost word for word. Genesis 4:34. How could I bear to see the terrible fate that befalls my father? Talking about Joseph when he realizes Benjamin is gone. So, yeah, like a super. And I think those are the only two times those phrases are written in that way. So it's very clear that there's a link here.
It's amazing. I mean, the more that I've studied, it's amazing to me how many times you'll see that common statement that this phrase or wording only occurs 2 times in all the Bible. And it's here in Esther, the story of Joseph, or other places in Scripture. It's amazing how many times that happens in the book of Esther.
And if we're a listener to this,
so what?
And what is the so what here? Like, why bring back at this moment to this story?
Well, you got to know the story of Joseph, and you have to know the interplay. But, we set it up last week with the selling that, if Judah was just selling Joseph, well, that's okay. But killing Joseph is not. And
so that step too far.
That's probably a step too far. But then you have Joseph now, that they don't recognize who Joseph is. And now you've got this struggle between Judah and Benjamin. And Judah has gone to his father, Jacob, and said, Jacob, you've got to let Benjamin go. And I promise you, I guarantee you, I will stand in honor of this, that if he doesn't come, then I will take on the destruction or the slavery of.
I will forfeit my life for
it's a guarantee.
Life.
And so you get Judah here, and it's such a humble, and you have to get into the nuance, and I don't know if we have time to do this today, but you have to get into the nuance of the struggle between the sons because they come from different mothers, especially the struggle of Leah and Rachel. And
I think to get
it's
background, I think that's an important aspect. You want to talk about that?
Well, you got Leah and Rachel, but you got 2 sons of Rachel, and that's Benjamin and Joseph. Joseph has now been sold off by the sons of Leah, and then you've got Benjamin now, who is going to be a slave to Pharaoh, and you have Judah, who was the instigator of selling Joseph in essence, to the Ishmaelites that took him to Egypt. But now
Judah was the son of Leah, not Rachel.
Who, by the way, is the lineage of Jesus, the Lion of Judah. We hear of Jesus, the Lion of Judah. So now you have Judah standing before Pharaoh and saying, you let Benjamin go, even though he's the one that stole the silver cup of divination. I will stand in his place. I will take it over. And you got Esther doing the same thing. I will stand in potentiality of dying before the king before this request. it's not just about selling to slavery now. I will give up my whole life so that the people of Judah, the tribe of Judah, will be saved. It's like, go ahead.
Which I think Esther's self-sacrifice here is an important to note, because I think we often forget in this story that the rule that still exists, that Esther can't go before the king without the king explicitly inviting her. Because like when I heard this, as a kid, it's just like, oh, and Esther talks to the king
They're hanging
again, and
out
it's all
again.
good. But she goes before him, and it makes a point of saying, and the king held out his scepter to her. She was not invited before the king because he had to say, it's okay. And so she is taking on this risk to herself to go before and beg for the life of Judah, much like you were talking about Judah begging for the life of Benjamin before.
Foreman brings out that she weeps at this point.
Yeah.
This is the first time.
This is the first time it feels like she's serious.
Yeah, like she didn't weep when she, as a former pastor said, just these Jezebel tears, that hope to manipulate and cajole the king to curry her favor with him. The seriousness of what's not been undone yet is still there. This decree is still out there. The Jews are still going to be destroyed, and it's going to be government approved.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why she's asking for it to be revoked. I'm like, do you think that did she know that it was irrevocable, or is that just all kind of like a wink wink thing of like, come on, everybody knows that the king actually, if he wanted to, had the power to revoke it, and Esther knows this, and so she's pleading? Or do you think she just is not aware of this apparently hidden rule that we don't know about?
Well, let me speak to that. So,
Yes.
Are God's covenants irrevocable? No.
No.
Are his laws irrevocable?
No.
We see that in Genesis 2 and Genesis 3. There was punishment required because the law was irrevocable. God's law is truth, and God's law is not revoked. He can't just say, I'll make a pass on this. And so when his law comes down, in this case with the king of Persia, this is not a perfect allegory here. I'm just trying to make a point here that I think it puts personal responsibility. Remember, this was not the government coming and lining people up like they did in Germany with the Jewish people and annihilating them in gas chambers and the like. This was an anti-Semite law. It said, we're not going to come kill the Jews. This is Haman's edict. But you people that are non-Jewish, the Persians, you can go kill the Jews and you can take their stuff. And in this case, I believe because the law was irrevocable, whether that was true or not of Persia, which I think it was, I think it's Yahweh saying, Jewish people, you have to take personal responsibility. It doesn't mean just giving you all this. You're going to have to stand up for what Yahweh is giving you the power to do. Does that make sense? I don't know if I think I stepped on my feet a couple of times, but did that make sense?
I think we see this in later on. We see this article that I read. We see allusions to Jericho, and that although God says, "I'm giving you the city," you still have a responsibility to do these things to complete my plan.
Right.
Even though it sounds crazy, I need you to take a marching band and the auxiliary, and I need you to walk around the city. But I'm going to take care of it, but you've got to do your part.
There's like an agentic
and they're going to
part
actually have
that
to
we
go
have to
kill
do.
people. I mean, they're actually going to take a sword or a sledgehammer or whatever they're doing, and they're going to be killing people. This is a nasty, bloody massacre that Joshua leads to the people in Jericho. And this is what's going to potentially happen at the end of this book or this scroll, is that God is saying, you have to take this in your hands. I will set this up for you, but you must take on personal responsibility to effectuate what I have given you.
It's an interesting mix of the providence of God and the choices and the action of humanity in partnership with this God, right? What's that cliche? Pray like a Calvinist and act like an Arminianist, that God is doing what he's going to do, but that doesn't mean there's not a part for us to play.
Oh, can I piggyback? And I probably am done because I don't have much more material in my head on this, but let me piggyback on this. So I have meditated on this Joseph, Benjamin, Judah story. It's just a beautiful story. And then as you link it, obviously there's a link here. And I'm not saying this is the link, but it is for me a little bit. It's like, they were scared that Benjamin and Judah and the sons were scared that Benjamin was going to be sold into slavery forever. Was that ever really going to happen? No. Joseph was
clearly
never going to put his own favorite brother of the same mother into slavery. It was all a farce. It was never going to ever happen because it wasn't in the cards, because Joseph was just acting like that Benjamin stole this cup of divination and he was going to be sold in slavery. It was never going to be that. It was almost like he was giving the room for Judah to step up and do the right thing. And in this case, I know this is a heretical, so just let's get over it. Where the Jews,
this is not a worm thing, is there? Oh,
it's close. It's going to be close.
Okay.
Were the Jewish people ever really subject to annihilation in this parable? I mean, were they ever? If you link it to Joseph's story, it's not. They never were, but God was wanting to set the place for Esther and Mordecai, but for Esther to step up and take personal responsibility to effectuating what he had already done for them. And to go back to what Mordecai said to Esther, if you don't do it, somebody else will. The end is already done. Yahweh already has set the ending. That's your, pray like a Calvinist part. But to act like a Arminian is we still have our part to step in and to effectuate not just salvation, spiritual justice and spiritual salvation, but for social justice and do the right thing when we see the wrong thing occurring.
So how can Mordecai be so certain that the Jews will be safe in another way, even if Esther doesn't step up and do what she's been in place to do? How is he so certain of that?
Because he's read the story of Joseph, and he sees all the links to that. That's how. Seriously, I'm being serious.
No.
He sees it all the way through. That this is what God has promised, not to a person, but to a people, to the community that he's bringing out and making holy. But not to Mordecai himself and not to Esther herself, but to the people. He will bring justice. He will bring salvation. But if you want to step up, you can be part of that. If you don't, then step away and someone else will fill those shoes.
And so all this suffering in the middle, in a sense, is redeemed because the ending is known, because God has set that ending. And like just thinking meta for a second, isn't that true of the entirety of the Christian life and like our story? Like we know the end of the story. Now we argue over how the end of the story ends, but we know the end of the story. We know who wins. And I think we can also look at the same thing of going, okay, there are a lot of unjust things right now, but in the end, there will be full justice. There's going to be suffering now, but in the end, it will be redeemed because of where God is going in history.
Where did we get to? What verse did we end on that?
Verse 6.
Verse 6. Okay, so we haven't got to 7 yet.
Yeah, I'll jump into that now. Verse 7, I'll do verses 7 and 8. King Ahasuerus said to Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, I love all the naming, Esther the queen and Mordecai the Jew, look, I've given Haman's estate to Esther, and he was hanged on the gallows, or as we know, like spiked on it, because he attacked the Jews. Verse 8, write in the king's name whatever pleases you concerning the Jews, and seal it with the royal signet ring. A document written in the king's name and sealed with the royal signet ring cannot be revoked. What do you got there?
The king thinks it's over with, doesn't he?
Does he, or is he?
His part's over with.
Oh, that his part's over with. Yeah,
I've protected my queen against this evil, wicked Haman who's trying to take her away, either by seduction or by execution. I have done my part. I protected my stuff. Now, what you want to do and how you want to take care of your people, that's on you. I mean, is that how it reads?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up thinking like in this part of the story, like that is the victory, is like this response right here. But now knowing the context, the king doesn't actually give Esther what she wants here. In fact, if anything, he's like going, hey, I already did this for you.
What more do you want from me?
Yeah. And now it's like, all right, here's the auto pin. The last one can't be revoked. Do what you want. And he's kind of like backing away, saying this is all on you now. I just find that really interesting that it's not, the win is not yet.
Well, because he could have sent his army to protect the Jews. He could have, been like, he could have done it a whole bit different ways, but he kind of just steps back. It's like, whatever you guys want to do, you can do.
I do think it's interesting that by him doing this, it allows Mordecai, right, to be the one that signs the decree that saves the Jewish people, right? And again, the reversal.
Back, the whole reversal in verse
exactly.
Chapter 3, right?
Totally.
Haman's the one that's writing the edict to destroy the Jews, and now the ring that Haman used to make that edict is now being given to Mordecai to be able to write another edict to save the Jews.
It's almost like that's perfect symmetry with chiasm.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Again, like this is a very creative solution, I feel like, that we're about to come up on, and we'll talk about that. In a sense, it's, if you've heard the term creative resistance, that's what this is. It's okay, you're not going to do it for us, so we're going to have to do something else. Anything else on those two before? Well, I'm going to have you read verses 9 through 14, but anything else there before we go? Okay.
Verse 9. So the king's scribes were called at the time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces which extended from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, to every province according to its script, and to every people according to their language, as well as to the Jews according to their script and their language. He wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus, and sealed it with the king's signet ring, and sent letters by the couriers on horses, riding on steeds, sired by the royal stud. In them the king granted the Jews who were in each and every city the right to assemble and to defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate the entire army and any people of the or province which might attack them, including children and women, and to plunder their spoil on the day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. That's a long sentence. A copy of the edict to be issued as law in each and every province was published to all the peoples, so that the Jews would be ready for this day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers hastened, and impelled by the king's command, went out, riding on the royal steeds, and the decree was given out at the citadel of Susa.
Did you know that verse 9 is literally the longest verse in the Hebrew scriptures? So
That's crazy.
There you go. and I think part of that is, we'll talk about this, why this decree is very detailed. It's very violent. It seems aggressive. Some might even say genocidal, but I don't think it is. We can talk about why that is. What's going on here? Why that much specificity and seemingly aggressiveness in this edict?
Can we talk
So
about time? Go ahead, Raleigh.
No, I mean, you can go ahead. Okay.
I'm not going to talk about what Tim just said, so you could answer what Tim asked. But I do want to put something in perspective. We're talking about only 10 days between the first edict and this edict, and we're talking about barely 2 days from the time that Haman has to take Mordecai through the city streets until this day. So we have, this is all happening over, 8 years from the time of Vashti to the end. And we have all this movement all within 2 days. And we're going to get to these fast horses, by the way. So anyway, right, I just want to make that point is we probably still have some horses taking it on the first tract for Haman's edict. And now we're going to have Mordecai's edict with faster horses, by the way, what the scripture says, to maybe overcome the first edict to say that they can defend themselves. Go ahead, Raleigh.
Well, I was just going to say that the specificity and the seeming harshness of the edict serves as a deterrent for anyone to present themselves as an enemy to the Jews. Because at this point, you see that the favor of the king isn't on the people that are going to be attacking the Jews. It's pretty apparent that he's going to be not backing the Jews outright, but he's not going to be like, yeah, they can do what they need to do.
It's like a fair fight
them.
now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the plunder and the specificity, like the women and the children, you will be completely annihilated and impoverished if you try to stand against the Jewish people.
So why did Mordecai feel compelled to write it in that way? I mean, you read Foreman. I read Foreman on this. It's a interesting take on how he sees the reason and the wording of Mordecai's edict compared to Haman's edict.
It's been a while, but it doesn't have to do with, it's pretty much and this wouldn't be a surprise in this story, it's a reflection of that first edict. It's just mirroring back, but doing the opposite of it, right? And right down to the women and children.
You know, the
language destroy, kill, and annihilate. It's present when Esther's speech to the king in 7, and it's present back in 3:13 in Haman's decree.
Well, in 13 it says the letters were sent by couriers in chapter 3. This is Haman's decree to all the king's provinces with instruction to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate. That's the same phrase that we see repeated 3 times. And now all Jews, young, old, women, and children, on the 13th day of the 12th month, and to plunder their goods. And so if we remember the story of First Samuel of Saul and the Amalekites, what was Saul not supposed to do, but he did?
Plunder their goods.
Plunder, right? So why would Mordecai, knowing the background of this situation, include and also plunder the goods of these people that are attacking, that are attacking under the authority of Haman, an Agagite? Why would he include?
The only answer I would have is that he's trying to exactly copy Haman's edict, but just undoing it.
That's kind of what I would say as well, that it's not meant to be. Well, we know the end of the story, right? We know that part actually does not happen. And so yeah, it does make sense that it's rhetorical. I'm just going to, since I can't revoke the first decree, I'm going to do a decree that just does kind of the opposite of it.
So if you're a satrap or governor of a province and you got these two decrees, right? One from Haman, and like Jonathan said, they could be coming one on top of the other. Which one are you gonna?
You put them both
which
up.
Which one
you
gonna?
You put them in your boat. You put them both up and hide in your palace with the doors locked.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't actually. They do contradict each other, but they don't in the sense that they can both happen.
Yeah, they don't necessarily stop each other, but they do.
Correct. And that's why I would say this is not, I threw the term genocide, but it's not a genocide because this is about defense, right? It's saying like, hey, when they come at you, here's what you can now do. It sounds like offense and it looks like offense, but it's only directed to the people that actually attack them.
So which one, if you're a governor, which one do you think is the king's real heart? Which one do you think is the king wanting us to destroy the Jews, or is he allowing the Jews to protect themselves?
And what they don't realize is he's drunk the whole time and has no opinion whatsoever.
I mean, what do you do? So if you think that he's for the Jews, or at least do you use governmental action to go with the first one?
No,
or do you use governmental action to go with the second one?
No,
don't touch it.
But that was my point, though. But this is not a government action. It's a government allowance. It's like, I'm going to allow you to kill, even though it's probably against the laws of Persia to kill each other, I'm going to allow you to kill the Jews on this day. So I don't think it's like what I said, I think last week, I can't remember. It's not like this is Hitler with Germany taking in Jews, putting them on trains, and the government actually killing them in gas chambers and the like. This is just like, hey, German people, if you run across a Jew, you can kill them, and there's not going to be any recompense for that. There's no retribution.
Yeah, I think of it as like the purge. Like the government's just like not going to touch the laws pertaining to like murder and stuff, and you can just do what you want, and we're not going to look at it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like the purge, just let them go for it, and now we're gonna put the handcuffs off the other side, and now you guys can defend yourself. But there doesn't, Wally, to your point, there doesn't seem to be, when you're just in the region, you're just hearing these decrees. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. You might be confused at this point, right? To go, okay, wait a minute. Like, what is it? Is it the purge? Or is it like, now you're just saying like, let's just have like flat out war at this point.
Civil war in the streets.
Literally.
So why would you mention royal steeds twice in this?
Well,
that's an interesting detail that they put in, right?
Well, the commentators, I think it's Levinson, maybe in Fox.
I handed that to you, John.
Well, no, I know, but it's almost like we've got really fast horses. We gave the slow horses to the first edict, but we got really fast horses on this one. And, it's possible they could even overtake them. If it's going to the very ends of the kingdom, it could actually overtake them where they would be riding into town together with the same edict.
Yeah, to your point, the literal Hebrew word can mean racing horses, not just royal, like literal racing horses, which is kind of a funny picture, right? Like the first group are like, the fatties, they're walking.
They're the barn horses. They're at their last leg, literally. But then you take out the ones that have been trained to be, on the Kentucky Derby, they're going to go overtake them.
Exactly.
But I mean, if you're a satrap, are you wondering how does the king see the Jews?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I think he doesn't care.
I don't think they care.
I think the king is just kind of, I was joking about it, but he's drunk most of the book.
And I think Foreman brings out the importance of these next few verses in sort of setting the framework behind these decrees that are going to be landing in these different provinces. So
you mean as far as like how people will receive them, right? Because right now there's probably going to be a little confusion of like, hey, I know this was said, but where's the wind blowing? Where are we leaning right now? Which would be kind of important to know.
Because, I mean, evidently, as throughout this story, we've understood that Mordecai has always been identified with the Jewish people, right? I mean,
right.
Throughout the city, the reputation of Mordecai was Mordecai the Jew. And so I think Foreman brings out why do you have these next few verses in the context of the story sort of helps sort of frame how the provinces might receive these two decrees and which one they might be leaning towards.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good setup. So let's actually look at those verses. Jonathan, if you'll read verses 15 to the end there.
Mordecai went from the king's presence, clothed in royal blue and white, with a great gold crown and a purple robe of fine linen. The city of Susa shouted and rejoiced, and the Jews celebrated with gladness, joy, and honor. In every province and every city where the king's command and edict reached, gladness and joy took place among the Jews. There was a celebration and a holiday, and many of the ethnic groups of the land professed themselves to be Jews because fear of the Jews had overcome them, period. The ending is beautiful, but I'll let somebody else jump on that.
Yeah. Real quick, I just now noticed this. If you look at the end of verse 15, it says the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced, and the Jews celebrated with gladness, joy, and honor. So it looks like the city at large sort of rejoiced at this second edict. And
which is the reversal of what happened when Haman's edict. Remember, it said that
and they were thrown into confusion.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's
right.
good. Yeah. Because if these people are your neighbors and you're told, we're going to eradicate them, and you built relationships with them, I can imagine the confusion and the tension and kind of the relief of like, okay, maybe this won't happen. Yeah. What else there? You see the gladness
Wally,
and the joy that's received.
Yeah, I mean, I think, isn't it interesting when Mordecai comes and make himself in a public display here? He didn't do it after he received the signet ring and Haman was killed. He comes out in public in royal robes, known as a Jew, in a very public way after these decrees that he has written are sent out. I think it's a way of changing public opinion or influencing public opinion about the Jews and how the king sees the Jews, right? You have a noted Jew wearing royal robes now in front of all the city, and they're rejoicing and celebrating. And in fact, I think Jonathan's probably referring to this at the end of this verse, it says, and many among the peoples of the land became Jews, for the dread of the Jews had fallen on them. Is that what you were pointing to, Jonathan?
Well, no, when I read my commentaries, they made a big point of here in the very beginning. You have these, you have even Mordecai saying, "Don't identify yourself as a Jew because it's not a good thing." And we talked about this last episode. And you've got the Jewish people scared now. If the first edict actually hits, they're like, "Oh my gosh, the people and the armies can come and kill them now. I don't want to be Jewish." It's kind of almost like Germany when they were hiding. The Jewish people were hiding from Hitler and the Germans. It's almost like now everybody wants to be identified as a Jew. And it's this complete reversal of, at least now, the Jewish people are wanting to identify them as Jews. As we have at this beginning of the story, we don't even have the prospective queen of Persia wanting to identify herself as a Jew, and actually doesn't until after Haman's dead.
And in verse number 17 at the end, we have a hyperlink.
We have Purim.
I don't know.
We have Purim.
That's a foreshadowing,
hyperlink,
right?
Joshua chapter 2, Rahab talking to the spies. It says, "For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt. And what you, I'm sorry, I need to go back one. Verse 8, before the men lay down, she came to the roof and said to the men, I know the Lord has given you the land, and the fear of you has fallen upon us." It's almost the exact same wording here for the dread of the Jews had fallen on them. It's almost the exact same phrase in Joshua when they're about to destroy Jericho versus what's going to be happening on the 13th day of Adar.
So this is not a come to Jesus moment for them where they're like repentant and like, oh, we should have been Jewish all along. This is like actual fear is what you're saying.
Yes, I think so.
Well, it throws back to when Zeresh is talking to Haman. It's like, if this man Mordecai is a Jew, you're going to fall before him. You can't win. And I think this is the whole rest of the kingdom realizing the fear of the Jews, that something is going before them that makes them unstoppable. They have favor in something greater than themselves. And while it's not explicitly mentioned in Esther that that's God, that's all over the subtext of the book.
It's like, do you want to be on the winning team or not?
Yeah.
It's like, we just showed our cards of who's going to win, and here you go.
I think this is just another point of hyperlink that reminds us of the confidence that Mordecai has that God is going to protect and provide for his people. Regardless of how bad the circumstances might look and how desperate they are, that God is sovereign and is superior over all those things, and his purposes and plans, his covenants and promises will always come to fruition, and nothing can stop what the Lord wants to do, as Job finds out in the end of the book of Job in 42.
It's good. Anything else there? I guess I was just going to quote one thing that Levinson says about this last verse. It says, whereas the Jews were once threatened and trying to pass as non-Jews, now the Gentiles, feeling endangered by the unexpected consequences of the anti-Semitism in their midst, are passing as Jews, perhaps permanently. The fear that falls upon these Gentiles is yet another instance of the mysterious grace that seems to envelop the Jews throughout this story. That's it.
Yeah.
The end of this chapter feels like, and they lived happily ever after. Why do we get 2 more chapters after this?
The day has not yet arrived.
Okay.
Because we're like 8 months away, aren't we? We're still 7 or 8 months away. We had all this haste to make sure the 2 edicts get there, but these days are like, 8 months still away, 9 months away before they're actually going to supposedly occur.
Yeah, and what do we think's happening in the meantime? Like, is there still this idea of like, hey, it's going to happen, or like, are we just kind of left to guess?
Well, I guess the Jews are starting to be in preparation to defend themselves, right? They're prepping. They're the early
Doomsday
preppers.
prepping.
Doomsday preppers.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. And I think this has kind of been mentioned, but the fact that in this ending passage, it's totally tipping your hand to what's about to happen with the festival of Purim. It's like a little seed of joy and celebration. And I think it even uses the word holiday, right? At least there's a celebration and a holiday. And many of the ethnic groups of the land profess themselves to be Jews. Yeah. So.
And I know we'll hit this probably next week. I think we may be doing both together. I don't know if we're doing 9 and 10 together, but maybe a recap episode. What is Purim? And what does that, we know what it might mean to the Jewish people. We've talked about the drinking and the plays and the comedies and all that. But, what does it mean for, Yahweh? What does it say about Yahweh? And what does it say about even us today of how we can take and glean what Purim means for the non-annihilation of the Jews in the story of Esther, whether that occurred or not, to what does that really mean, meta, through the whole lifespan of the whole Bible, Old and New Testament.
And there'll be some fun too with even talking about the word Purim and like what we know it to mean, which is the die that Haman cast. But there's another meaning that makes it a double meaning that's really, really interesting as well. So we'll talk about that in the next episode as well. Awesome. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. We've gotten deep, especially the last couple chapters. And we will, Jonathan, to your question, we'll probably hit both 9 and 10 next episode and then do an episode to tie it all together. So thank you, everyone. Have a great week. We will see you next time.